They don't have the votes to convict. We had 45 people, 45 Republican senators say that the whole charade is unconstitutional. So what does that mean? It means that impeachment, the trial, is dead on arrival. There will be a show, there will be a parade of partisanship, but the Democrats really will not be able to win.
Ladies and gentlemen, Rand Paul, with 45 Senate Republicans voting to dismiss Donald Trump's impeachment trial, the New York Times reports it this way tonight, and we quote, "The overwhelming level of Republican support exceeded what almost anyone was expecting." Well, back with us again this evening is Jason Johnson, campaign veteran, journalist, contributor to the Grio, professor of politics at Morgan State University, and Steve Schmidt, longtime political strategist who led John McCain's '08 campaign, has since left the party. He's among the founders of the Lincoln Project, which set out to defeat Trump and Trumpism. And Steve, you are where I am going to start. Donald Trump has vanished. He's vanished from sight. He has vanished from Twitter. Out of sight, out of mind in all but MAGA nation. Why then does he only seem to live on in the minds and hearts of the sniveling cowards?
Well, good evening, Brian. Look, let me just start with Rand Paul's comments. And this is somebody who ran talking about his fidelity to the Constitution. His comments are a travesty there. Even in the height of Jim Crow in the South, when there was violence done against Black Americans, occasionally the perpetrators, white people, would be brought before a jury, and a trial would take place. More often than not, in most instances, that trial acquitted those white people, regardless of the preponderance of their guilt. It didn't mean just because you knew in advance that they would be acquitted that there shouldn't be a trial. Because one day there was accountability, there was justice. It's not about winning, it's about justice. It's a trial. We all saw the President of the United States incite a mob of white supremacists, white nationalists, extremist militia, fascist Proud Boys. He incited them to violence. They attacked the Capitol. The Capitol fell. The American flag was torn down. The MAGA flag was raised in its place. The floor of the United States Senate, the floor of the House of Representatives were desecrated. This mob was there to kill the Vice President and the Speaker of the House. They didn't succeed, but they killed 5 people, including bludgeoning a police officer to death. There must be accountability for an attack against the people of the United States, an attack against the people's government, the government of the people, by the people, for the people. And so it doesn't matter. We'll see the complicity, the cowardice. We'll see the subordination of their oath of office to the Constitution as they once again assert their loyalty to Donald Trump. And the American people will once again get to take their measure. It is a good thing that Donald Trump has been removed from power, but he leaves behind a real deal autocratic movement in this country. And that movement is sustained in part by the cynicism of the elected elites of the Republican Party, men like Kevin McCarthy and Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley and men like Rand Paul. And this is why you're seeing an action by corporate America that's saying the 147 members of Congress that rose in an action that would have disenfranchised, nullified, eradicated the voice of millions of Americans on the basis of their skin color. That vote, after the violent insurrection, was a crossing of the Rubicon. And those companies are saying no more donations. And I think in the end, you'll see $100 million to $200 million come out of the political committees that support these members. We're at a time of great turbulence in the politics of the country. As the president tries to deal with this crisis, there must be accountability. There must be justice, not just for the incited who stormed the Capitol and did the violence, but for the inciters, starting with the President of the United States, but also Senators Hawley, Senator Cruz, and former Majority Leader, now Minority Leader McCarthy in the House of Representatives.
Professor Johnson, even though we are friends, I'm going to ask you, since his name was invoked, to watch this with us. As you do, remember this is a product of Princeton and Harvard Law School. Here is Ted Cruz tonight on Hannity.
This is driven really by the partisan rage and the partisan anger the Democrats feel. They hate Donald J. Trump, and they're engaging in an act that I think is petty. I think it is retribution. I think it is vindictive, and I think it's a waste of time. And so to coin a phrase, I think it's time to move on. It's time to move on and focus on helping people get back to work, helping people beat this global pandemic, bringing America back to where we should be, not these partisan games the Democrats are playing.
So, Jason, that's how a guy whose desk was looted talks about this. It's the anger somehow of the Democrats. It's petty. My question to you is, what is the chance that it's something less than an impeachment trial, that there is some kind of off-ramp plea bargain? Where is this thing headed?
It's going nowhere, Brian. And the reason is because of disingenuous pablum from people like Ted Cruz, who's a coward, who still has this sort of ridiculous fantasy that one day he's going to catch all the magic rings of the MAGA universe and put them on his fingers and somehow become president in 2024. That's what all of this is about. They don't want to work with the Democrats. They don't want to hold Donald Trump accountable because they somehow think that those benefits will accrue to them one day. And this is part of why, in particular, I think what Ted Cruz did is so disgusting. Not only was he one of the instigators of this violence, not only is he somebody intelligent enough to know that this is actually constitutional, but Ted Cruz was one of the people who couldn't let Benghazi go like a rabid dog. He gnawed on that bone for years, screaming and yelling about Benghazi, and yet when it comes to an insurrection that killed 5 people, an insurrection that we're still investigating and finding out more and more that is very likely that members of his own party helped provide information and facilitate this attack, suddenly 2 weeks is enough time to move past it. That's what's so disturbing about this. So the idea that you've got Collins and Tim Kaine saying, oh, maybe we'll do censure, or the idea that, hey, maybe we can just have a vote on whether or not Donald Trump can ever run again, none of the Republicans are going to engage in that behavior because at their core, they still want this revolution to occur, and those who don't want it to occur somehow think that they're going to be able to run for president in 2024 off the face of 5 dead people and undermining this entire country.
We've agreed to a pause on the revolution. Both of these gentlemen have agreed to stay with us so I can fit in a break. When we come back, so many Republican senators without the conviction to convict. Back with us to join our conversation, Jason Johnson, Steve Schmidt. Jason, I have one for you. This is a tweet by our friend Andrew Desiderio over at Politico. He says, this flew under the radar today, but McConnell said he hasn't spoken with Trump since December 15th, the day after the Electoral College certified the election results and the day McConnell began calling Biden the president-elect. Jason, notwithstanding McConnell's, let's call it a test vote today, what is the chance the old campaigner, the editor-in-chief of American Nihilist magazine, Mitch McConnell, would vote to convict at this point?
It's next to nil. And I don't know why anyone who observed Mitch McConnell would be surprised that he and Donald Trump didn't talk. They were a very Brady Belichick relationship. Look, we're here just to win wings. We're here just to get judges. We're actually not friends, right? And now they're going to go off and try and do whatever their separate careers are going to be. Mitch McConnell will say all the nice things. He'll say that Donald Trump provoked things but didn't incite things. But under no circumstances is he even remotely interested in trying to hold President Trump accountable. That is not in his ideology, and that's not what he's going to ask anybody in his caucus to do. But what I think is important also to remember is by not having any communication with the president, it also indicates something that I think everybody needs to understand about the Republican Party. they weren't behaving this way just because of Donald Trump. It's like the, Dumbo and the feather, right? The feather wasn't making Dumbo fly. It was always within him. The Republicans were always a white nationalist party. That's what they decided that they were going to sell out to. So Donald Trump being gone or not communicating with McConnell doesn't mean they're not going to keep the same agenda. It just means they're not going to have somebody tweeting to 1 million bots every week to justify what they're doing.
I see your Brady mention, and I'll raise you one, Patrick Mahomes. Hey, Steve, this would have been the morning Rob Portman, newly fortified with the truth serum of retirement, conjured up the courage, but no, he maintains his 90% voting record. He voted on Trump's side today. Do you think we in the news media and chattering class were giving members of the Senate too much credit for how quickly they might migrate away from Donald Trump? Because this is a whole new kind of criminal cognitive dissonance, Steve. Some of these guys are going to sit here at this trial at desks that were looted and defiled, obviously in a chamber that was taken over. And to get to the chamber, they will walk past damage.
We have a crisis of cowardice in this country, but let's look at the two elements in the United States Senate, because they're two of the elements that always surround and make possible any autocratic movement. We have two types of people in there. We have the accomplices. We have the cynical elites, Holly, Cruz, Stanford, Yale, Harvard, professorships at Oxford, a clerkship to the Chief Justice of the United States. They know that the election was free, fair, and legitimate. They know that this is all a lie, but they are cynical and arrogant enough to believe that they can ride the tiger, that they can advantage themselves by going into business with the people that they have contempt for, the people outside who stormed the Capitol. And then there's the sheep, the people who just go along to get along, the accommodationists. That's what Rob Portman is, one foot in front of the other. He would be a lovely person to live next door to. He'd be a great guy for your kids to wave to. He'd be great to have an eye on the neighborhood. But he's a terrible United States senator because he doesn't understand that sometimes his job requires conflict. And the conflict that it requires is to stand up and to assert his faithfulness and fidelity to the Constitution of the United States, which was attacked. It was attacked by that mob that was incited by Holly and Cruz. There is no moving on from this. The people's government was attacked. That night, 147 of them rose. If they succeeded, if that vote had passed, what would have happened? The 244-year-old American Republic would have fallen. If they had succeeded, even at the height of Jim Crow, there was never a federal action to take away black votes, to nullify them from states that had certified a result. We're in new territory with all of this. And so there will be accountability. By the end of the month, 1,000 people will have been arrested by federal law enforcement authorities. And there will ultimately, as the facts become clear, be accountability for the political leadership of the country that also incited this. Some of them are U.S. senators. Some of them are House members. But for sure, we're not moving on as a country until there's accountability for one of the worst crimes in the history of the country.
Steve Schmidt, Jason Johnson, our thanks to two longtime friends of our broadcast. Thanks, gentlemen.